Good morning, everyone. Virgo here. It is December 5th, 2019. Happy Thursday to everyone. And I want to talk today about the gold standard. That is something that continues to be talked about around particular movements online. Now, there's a lot of individuals that have a misconstrued belief of what would happen to the country in the event that we were to go back on the gold standard. Instead of looking at the actual facts, they are going based on a belief of what used to be and what the ideology that we discuss on this channel most frequently tells them to believe. But the facts are a lot different than that ideology pushes. Their narrative is something that is illogical at this point in time. As a result of that, I feel it's necessary to bring this to the forefront. There are a lot of groups that have decided that they're going to attempt to cash out on the idea that a House resolution was put into play back in 2018 at an attempt to try to place the gold standard somewhat back into effect. They're using that House resolution as an attempt to try to make people believe that the gold standard has returned. And I'm going to correct and debunk that claim right now. So I'd like for you to take a look at what is stated in this website. Now, this website will actually be in the description of the video, so you can go ahead and you can take a look at everything that's on this website. Now, what we're looking at here, and there's many that are doing this, okay? Not just this website. There are tons of movements that are attempting to do this sort of thing. It's something that I find to be upsetting because the truth is that an actual treasury of any of these groups of individuals is unregulated entirely, and you don't know what it's backed by. The funny part about all of this is that virtually you're trading in actual spendable currency that is accepted everywhere within the United States and in most other countries too. You are actually trading in value for something that has no value. So you'll notice that this says acquire gold and silver backed certificates by clicking the image below. And as you can see, these are the actual certificates. Going in a little bit further here, you will see what the actual rates are for gold and then silver. And you will notice that they have put up here as of the 21st of October that these are the ounce rates, supposedly. All right, so what they're attempting to try to do is have people purchase these actual gold and silver treasury, but not United States Treasury, Moores Treasury. Rise of the Moores Treasury, gold certificates and silver certificates. And one of the things that they actually use to try to sell this thing is this statement right here. On March 22nd, 2018, the Congress of the United States entered Resolution 5404 into the House of Representatives of the United States Congress. They go on to talk about how that particular House resolution admits that the United States / Federal Reserve note has lost 96% of its value since the end of the gold standard in 1913. All right, I'm not going to go into reading any further of this. You guys can do that yourself. But what I do want to talk about is the House resolution that's being quoted right now. So unfortunately, a lot of times what will actually happen is you will have a congressman or a state representative that will present a House resolution, and people don't realize how a House resolution turns into an actual bill. So they'll see on governmenttrack.us, for example, that H.R. 5404, 115th, was to define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold. They will take that and run with it, assuming that it's something that has been put into play without doing any further research. And as a result, websites like the one you just saw get away with making the crazy claims that they do, and people start thinking that they can actually hand over good money, currency rather, that is usable in the United States and in other countries too that accept it, and certainly it can be converted to other forms, euros and pounds and all kinds of other things without question. Unfortunately, what they're receiving back, there's no actual proof that there is any gold or silver that actually really backs these certificates, nor are they able to take these certificates and transfer them in order to travel, in order to purchase things. They're simply investing in, ironically, a piece of paper. All right, so let's take a look at the context of this actual House resolution. So House Resolution 5404 was a bill that was introduced by Representative Alex Mooney, who is a Republican from West Virginia, that would bring the U.S. back to gold standard once and for all. It would take effect exactly 30 months after the bill was passed to allow an adjustment period in the American economy. Interestingly, for a Republican introduced bill, if the bill was enacted at any time after July of 2018, that 30-month window would come under the administration of the 2020 election winner, which could possibly be a Democrat. Mooney claims it is the first bill introduced in Congress to return to the gold standard since 1984. A search of GovernmentTrack's legislative database provides no evidence to the contrary. Previous House members, such as two-time presidential candidate Ron Paul, have advocated a gold standard, although it does not appear that Paul ever actually introduced any legislation to that effect after 1984. All right, so we already know what those that support this kind of idea think about it. They believe that taking control of the money supply away and taking it away from the Federal Reserve and giving it back to the American people, in other words, to return to the gold standard, is something that will assist American families. And they believe that there's something real that they don't think is there with a Federal Reserve note, with the US dollar. But some things that they don't actually take a look at are: opponents argue we abandoned the gold standard decades ago for a good reason, and it would be foolish to return. When the Great Depression hit, people hoarded gold instead of depositing it in banks. Not to mention other outside entities, okay, meaning China or another country, that potentially could demand upon the change to be paid in full in gold. So at the time, the Federal Reserve Vice President and Deputy Director of Research, David Wheelock, said countries around the world basically ran out of supply and were forced off the gold standard because of the fact that people were hoarding instead of depositing it in banks, which of course created an international gold shortage. That is something we do not need to see happen again. The U.S. mines a lot of gold, but we're not the biggest producer, Wheelock continued. The bigger suppliers of gold would have more control over monetary policy, and there's no reason to have it because we can get the advantages of the gold standard and avoid the disadvantages without being on the gold standard. That's what I was referring to. Other countries actually making a demand to pay in full due to the changes in gold that now the gold standard would bring back, which would deplete the United States of a lot of gold reserves and would also weaken our country greatly because the US dollar is considered the world currency. All right, not only that, but research also suggests that the sharp decrease in domestic manufacturing employment of recent decades is primarily due to other factors, such as automation. It really doesn't have a lot to do with not being on the gold standards. Now, it says here, odds of passage. So the bill has attracted no co-sponsors. That's not looking too good for the bill right there, guys. And this was actually put up April 27th of 2018. If anybody had just taken a moment to read these very short paragraphs, they would see that the odds of passage were 0 to none. There were a few other Republican Congress members who had previously indicated that they were going to support for returning to the gold standard, such as Ted Cruz, but that didn't happen. Once this actual bill went up by Mooney, no one supported it, as a matter of fact. And this is the part that you guys need to pay close attention to. As a matter of fact, not only did they not support it, but the bill was considered dead in a previous Congress. Dead. Meaning, no way is it going to pass. It died in a previous Congress. It was not enacted. So, because it wasn't enacted, there is no 30-month span from March 22nd of 2018 where quite quickly here we're going back on the gold standard, which is what all these groups are trying to get you to believe. It isn't true. All right, it was put up by Alex Mooney, and it died in a previous Congress. It is not enacted. It is not a law, and we are not going back on the gold standard. There are several reasons for that, other than what I have just mentioned. Number one, it would weaken the United States' stance financially internationally because we are considered the world currency. Number two, it would deplete gold reserves. And if you all think that in reality this is something that would be positive, let me tell you, when the gold reserves are dead, they're dead, which means they are depleted, and you, whether you had $28 million in your bank account or not, no longer would have anywhere near close to that, if anything at all, depending on how much reserves were available and how it was replaced. There isn't an undying amount. There isn't a complete and total forever going to be there mineral that we can continue to mine. It's limited, which is what was made it to where people agreed on the fact that it was valuable. All right. And once again, I'm going to state this again, you guys. Gold and silver are minerals. They are not money. It was agreed upon to use gold and silver as valuable minerals to as a currency because it was something that everybody agreed on. Just like everybody agreed on the fact that the US dollar was the world currency from every other country. All right. Again, it's simply an agreement of what currency is. Just because it's gold, just because it's silver, is not what makes it money. So stop saying that gold and silver are the only real money, because the truth is gold and silver are simply minerals, and they are something that people agreed upon to use as currency. Now, some of you might not care whether the United States is weakened or not due to the fact that we hold the world currency. But you'll start caring when you start seeing the fact that the United States is now beginning to look like another country that actually is a third world country, because we no longer have the financial standing, nor do we have the AAA credit report that once the United States had. All right, we are a country. We are not a corporation. We are a country. We are a sovereign country with a constitution. And it is important from the world stage's standpoint that we maintain the control that we currently have if we want to maintain our current status, which affects each and every one of us. The main reason for this video, guys, is because there are so many scams that are going on with individuals coming up with this idea to start their own banks, start their own treasuries, claiming that gold and silver is what it's going to be backed by, with absolutely no proof, absolutely no oversight, no one whatsoever to keep a check and balance on it, and they're selling these certificates for massive amounts of actual U.S. currency. This is a problem, and I have to tell you that the fact that they are using this bill, which never was actually enacted, and not only was it not enacted, but it was considered dead shortly after its introduction in March 22nd, 2018, is something to be very concerned about when a group of individuals are trying to make you believe that it was enacted. That's a flat out lie. So, I hope that this video reaches you on a level that allows you to realize that you must research what's being told to you by anybody at all. I don't care who they are or where they're from, but definitely if you're dealing with an offshoot group that is telling you things you've never ever heard before and selling things online where you can virtually hold them not responsible in any way for anything they do or sell you. This is where people get scammed. This is why they get scammed. And quite frankly, if you don't do your due diligence on these subjects before handing over a credit card or a wad of cash, you might deserve to get scammed. All right, everybody. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware. HR 5404 never was enacted, and we are not going back on the gold standard. As a matter of fact, one person placing this as a presentation to the House does not mean that Congress admitted anything about 96% of a deflate in the US dollar. That is one person, and that one person can be incorrect, and that one person can be politically charged with an agenda. And let's face it, guys, you're the first ones generally to say you can't trust politicians, right? There's nothing in the law that says a politician cannot lie. So stop acting like this is something that Congress itself said. Stop acting like it's an actual fact. Because until you actually understand economics and you do some real research on these subjects, you're not even going to understand what or how a law is actually put into play. And if you don't start checking out these House resolutions, which are simply a presentment to Congress to view something and potentially pass it, and not an automatic law, you're going to get taken advantage of a lot if you don't start actually looking in to what these things are and how they've panned out. For example, for the longest time, because the senator of New Hampshire had put forth a House joint resolution that would be something that would stop people in New Hampshire from having to have driver's licenses and insurance. That was used by a movement for 3 years before anybody brought it to your attention that the bill never even ended up being presented because it was considered dead on arrival. House Resolution 5404 was never enacted. We're not going back on the gold standard. To opt to decide, rather, these group of people to decide to weaken the United States and their financial standing in the world because one person, one representative, decided to put forth this particular bill to see whether it would get any support or raise any flags or anything like that, and got no co-sponsors. None. Zero. No co-sponsors. Does not make anything a law. And as I said, due diligence, folks, because these people, they mean business, and their business is to scam you. Have a good day, everyone.